Okay, let's jump straight ahead. I want to start my talk with a scenario that I think is very familiar to every Ruby developer here. You find a new promising gem. You're excited. You want to try it out right away. But how exactly can you do it? Often it comes down to just two options. You have to either integrate the gem into an existing, often very complex project, or boilerplate an entire new project just for a quick test. So before you can write a single line of code with the gem itself, you need to deal with a lot of setup work. And only imagining doing that kind of kills the momentum and the excitement slowly starts to fade. This creates a gap between the moment you discover something exciting and the moment you actually get to try it. And this talk is about the tool that will help our ecosystem to bridge this gap and make the experience of trying out new Ruby gems as smooth and as delightful as possible. At Evil Martians, we are all about Ruby. We build complex applications with it, we contribute to the open source, and we love this ecosystem. And I am not an exception. I've been working with Ruby for quite a while now. But like many of you, I've also had the chance to work with other stacks, mostly Golang, but I also had some experience with Node.js, Python, and of course, sometimes I have to do some front-end stuff with JavaScript. And working with these other stacks always gives me a fresh perspective when I come back to Ruby. It really highlights what makes our community special. One of the Ruby's greatest strengths, Ruby's ecosystem greatest strengths, is that if you imagine just any feature for your application, almost certainly there's a gem for it. Often there are 5 or 10 gems for it. This ecosystem is so powerful that it inspired countless tools in other languages. And this is especially true in the web development domain. Many of the frameworks you see on the screen are directly based on the patterns established by Ruby and its ecosystem. But here's the paradox. A massive ecosystem full of options can also be a weakness. If there are too many options, it becomes hard to choose the right one. And this makes the friction issue I mentioned earlier even worse, pushing time to value even further. Let's take a look at how JavaScript ecosystem deals with the same problem. After all, it's the language of a browser, so it must have a natural advantage here, right? Well, indeed, the JavaScript ecosystem has some spectacular technologies which relate to our topic, so let's take a look at them. The first thing I want to mention is called Staglitz. It's an online IDE that can spin up a full stack application environment right in the browser. And the thing about this tool is that everything related to the development environment happens right in the browser, from installing APM packages to running dev servers. The magic behind this technology is something called web containers. Web containers power a lot of cool stuff. One example is this tutorial from the official Angular docs. And again, the party hosting these tutorials doesn't have to run tons of cloud servers, because with web containers, the user's machines are doing all the heavy lifting for the dev setup. Using this tech, Staglitz team built Tutorial Kit, a framework for creating interactive tutorials. You can make lessons with light code examples that users can edit and run while seeing the results of their actions immediately in a preview of running application. So how the hell this thing works, you may ask? Let me give you a quick overview. A key technology behind all this is WebAssembly, which is a low-level binary format that can be executed in modern browsers. It's basically a compilation target for many languages, and the resulting WebAssembly module runs in browser with near-native performance. And the key idea behind web containers is quite simple. Staglitz team just took the Node.js runtime, compiled into WebAssembly, and just casually build a whole operating system around it. This diagram is a very simplified architecture of it, so let's take a quick walkthrough. The runtime boots in an isolated web worker, so the web page would stay responsive even when web container is busy. Also, there's a virtual in-memory file system and a service worker that acts as network proxy. The tutorial has 3 interactive elements: editor, preview, iframe, and the terminal. These 3 UI elements interact with the runtime through Web Container API. So how does this all relate to Ruby? Turns out that WebAssembly can also run Ruby. The StackBase team compiled Node.js runtime to WebAssembly, and we can do the same thing with the Ruby interpreter. And here's the wild idea. Can we somehow integrate our compiled Ruby runtime into the web container architecture? Sounds like quite a challenge, right? Well, it definitely was a challenge, and we, Evil Martians, have been exploring this for a while now, and we've come a very long way. So let me quickly recap the previous episodes of our Ruby on WebAssembly journey. On the last year's Euruko, my colleague Sviat presented runruby.dev. This project is an online playground that lets you run Ruby code in a browser environment. This talk covers some cool technical challenges, like, for example, how a shared file system between JavaScript and Ruby was implemented, which allowed this playground to install gems. But the coolest part of this talk, in my opinion, was the demo of running Ruby web server. This was a huge deal, and it opened a lot of possibilities for us. The next talk I want to reference is from my other colleague, Vladimir Dementiev, or Vova. He made it on the latest WasmCon, and in this one he presented his gem, which is called Wasmify Rails. This gem contains everything needed to package a whole Rails application into a WebAssembly module, which made it possible to run Rails server in a browser. So now we can call our thing Rails on WebAssembly. And finally, on this year's RailsConf, which happened just a couple months ago, Vova and I introduced an interactive version of the official Rails Getting Started guide. Basically, we've rebuilt the whole tutorial and made almost each lesson interactive. And technically, the main increment to our previous work here was the support for the development environment. Now, we not only can run a production Rails server in a browser, but we also support the Rails commands, like generators, migrations, the console, and the live reload for the server. Looking at the UI of our guide, you may find it familiar, and it's not surprising because it's actually built with Tutorial Kit. So here comes the final name for our setup, Rails on web containers, which means that we were able to integrate Ruby runtime into the Tutorial Kit and the web container architecture. In the talk, we cover some technical details about how we managed to make it work. In a nutshell, it's just a bunch of glue code between JavaScript and Ruby. I won't go into much technical details now. If you want to learn even more technical details, I recommend you to check out this guide written by Vova, which covers a lot of technical details about our Rails Wasmification setup. And fun fact about this guide, the website is itself a Rails on WebAssembly application. The next logical step after the Rails guide was to generalize this experience and make it available for any Ruby gem. Because basically, at this point, it was possible to bring the whole framework to Ruby developers. And I promised to do exactly that at the end of the talk. And I literally announced that it's going to happen on Euruko. Well, a promise is a promise, so let's see how it turned out. Now I'm going to show you a quick demo. For the demo, we are going to implement a little interactive tutorial for the action policy gem, which is a popular authorization library. Because who wants to scroll through boring text, right? Users should be able to try it out immediately. First, we create a tutorial project with a single command. The CLI will prompt you a few questions, like the name of the tutorial, then, hosting providers for automation. The hosting, which package manager should we use? And here comes the Ruby-specific part. The prompt asks us to, if we want to edit the gem file. Here we can add any gem we want. We're adding our action policy gem. And finally, the CLI will instruct you about the next steps. Before following them, let's take a quick look at the created project's structure. Tutorial kit is based on Astro, which is used pretty widely nowadays. It's a static site generator. So if you ever worked with it, this structure should look familiar to you. Once the project is ready, we need to build the WebAssembly module from our edited gem file by running Ruby Wasm command. This step might take a while for the first run, but the following builds should be much faster thanks to caching. In our tutorial project, we have a Ruby Wasm directory, which is actually a mini Rails application that is going to be built, the compilation target basically for our building pipeline. The gem file that we are editing is located in this project, and the resulting WebAssembly module appears in the site's public directory after the build, which makes it available for the browser to download and pass to the web container. Once the build is finished, we can install the JavaScript dependencies and start the development server. By default, the project comes with a few lessons from our Rails guide, just to demonstrate the main features. All lesson content is written in Markdown files with some metadata at the top, which configures the lesson. For example, it can determine which interactive elements will be available, because we might not need some of them for specific lessons. And here's how the rendered lesson looks. All interactive elements from original tutorial kit are available. Our lesson can have a terminal, which allows users to run Rails commands, including Rails console, the editor, and of course it can run a Rails server with a preview of running application. When the dev server is running, we can navigate to the lesson that introduces Rails console, and make sure that our action policy gem is indeed available from this console. Finally, the only thing that's left is to adjust the boilerplate's lesson content. Here we added some stuff for our action policy gem. And here's the result, a fully interactive learning experience, just like on your local machine. Well, it's indeed your local machine, but you never had to install anything, even Docker. Yeah, this is supposed to be a video. Okay. Oh, okay, it's playing. Yeah, nice. Let's see. Real Rails app. We're changing some policy. Now we will see, yeah, not authorized, which means our gem is loaded and working fine. Thank you. If you want to get a full picture of this platform's capabilities, you can check out our Rails Getting Started guide. Here's the link. You can treat it as an ultimate demo, because everything that is implemented there is available for you in the tutorialkit.rb and our fork. So here's the project, which is our attempt to bridge the gap I was mentioning in the beginning, the gap between the fascinating moment of discovery and the actual hands-on experience. But the thing, this thing doesn't bridge anything by itself. It's a tool that is meant to be used by developers. So I'm encouraging you all to try it out and build your own interactive tutorials for the Ruby ecosystem. Here are some ideas of what you can use it for. UI component libraries, Rails engines, online tutorials. These categories are great candidates, but of course, it's not limited to these use cases only. There might be even more interesting applications. Here I have to mention one legal limitation that web containers have. Their license allows free usage, but only for non-commercial projects. If you plan to use it in some commercial product, it's still available, but the API usage is paid. You can check out the pricing information on the Staglis website. But yeah, it can still be cost-effective, because, again, paying for the container API versus running your own cloud servers, this might be a cheaper option. And finally, let's mention our future plans. Where are we planning to move this project? The fork is on its early stage, so of course our first priority right now is the improvements for the user and developer experience. In the meantime, we are planning to actively use this tool ourselves to create more interactive tutorials for Ruby ecosystem. Also, theoretically, our platform already can support other Ruby web frameworks, so it shouldn't be very hard to add the support for any rack-based web framework, Sinatra, Hanami, whatever. And finally, not every gem exists in the context of some web framework, so it also makes sense to add a lightweight pipeline for pure Ruby gems. We may have some updates on something from that list on the upcoming SF Ruby conference, which is happening in November, so stay tuned. And for today, that is all for me. Thank you.